Hey everyone, this is gonna be part two of arms. I was gonna just do one singular video, and then I realized, it might be a little helpful to do like some like shading tips, I guess, on how to do shadows on the arm. And I already have these different models that I drew from the last video, so I will kind of just shadow over them real quick. And this will just be sort of like a continuation video of the first part of arms. So if you want to see that, or you just want to skip to this one, either one works. It doesn't really matter if you watch them in order or not. So yeah, we'll just get into it. I might, on the next page too, I'll do more of like a bit of fantasy stuff with arms and just explore a couple concepts. So, and I was thinking of doing like a zombie, like more underskin arm as well. If you guys want to see sort of like some of the fibers and different things. I don't know it like totally accurate, but I can just show sort of what I know. All right, and then all right, good. I have my shadow color here. And all right, so for shading the arm, probably would like a bit of a lighter color if I can find one. Since especially skin will be a bit lighter. Okay, this would be better for like the roundness. Okay, so for the tricep, the under area back there, I like to sort of round it off. This person's a lot slimmer, so he doesn't have like the crazy muscular definition on like that shoulder head there. And then under the elbow. And then I like to do a bit of hatching when I'm doing coloring to kind of like describe the three-dimensionality of it. And then, yeah, that's probably, usually I like to do two tones. So we'll have a bit of a darker one and then that lighter one. And the lighter one, I'll go through and do more of like the rounding off to really express how the different areas are rounded. And then more of this darker color, I like to do a lot more of cast shadows or go in and make certain like crevices or areas that might not have as much light a little bit darker. So a lot of like corners, the starting of things. And so I'll just do a lot of examples for the shading. It might just help to like kind of watch, and I'll just kind of like explain. So this one has a bit more, but I was also doing a little bit more of a bulky arm. So I'll kind of really round off where that bicep is. And the bicep and the tricep on this arm, they're almost like melded together in a way. So it's just very round. So I will shade off of that too. So if I really wanted to at this point, I could like really define out his whole arm. But for like the actual idea for this arm, I'm gonna stick with the original and make it a lot more like bulky and rounded. Try to give like as many different variations. So if you guys have like a similar character that you have that has a very similar build or something, then I might be able to help out on that. All right, so a lot of the times when I'm shading too, just like shadows in general, I like to start with cast shadows and then work my way out from that. So like if you don't know what a cast shadow is, it's basically a shadow that's being casted by an object. So if okay, an easy way to show this would just be put in a box above this character. And the nice thing about that I like about cast shadows is so this box doesn't look like it's quite above the character, but if I add excuse me, a heavy shadow right above where this box is, now all of a sudden the box, so it's like over top of his shoulder. So especially when working with ink, I like using shadows to sort of like morph the ideas of the page to how I need to. So if you watch the like my video on kind of talking about drawing with ink in general, there's a lot of like freedom still, and you can kind of customize as you go, and it's not as like permanent as a lot of people would probably think. Although you can draw with a very like restrictive mindset where you can just basically not fix anything if you like really want to sort of make your lines definite. But yeah, so we got that arm, and we'll add the darker tone, which isn't very dark. It's like a 30% gray, I think, but it looks quite dark since we have a very light peach for the skin tone. And then yeah, I'm trying to be very careful when I do the very dark tone because it can look very unnatural pretty quickly if I put that everywhere. But a lot of these very tight areas where basically light would not hit, or the cast shadow that I talked about before, and like it could be a box, it could be the character's arms, so kind of like what I did with this character's arm over here, and I could do it onto this too, so maybe our light is hidden this way, or just in a lot of lighting scenarios we would get some sort of ambient occlusion where the basically ambient occlusion is when two objects are just basically very close together, and they sort of like, because they're close together, they kind of make a shadow together. But the shadow would probably, it's sort of like cast shadow a bit, except it's not from like direct light. It's more so kind of like a crevice or some sort of area like that. Like if there was no light or the light was not as much of a factor. So yeah, I kind of don't think about the ambient occlusion as much as I kind of in my head kind of like to think of it as like a cast shadow in a way, since like the chest is sort of casting a shadow on that back arm. Right, and then these figures are getting a little bit more definition, so we'll have a lot more areas for this darker shade than the previous ones. And if you're shadowing anything, I've ran into a lot of different like times when some like figures or objects are a little bit more demanding on shadow, or they open a lot of like areas up to where shadow could be more so than others. Like a good example is like I guess arms can, well they can have like the more muscle definition, the more areas that kind of open up for cast shadows. But doing more of like this arm, there's not as many areas for cast shadow since it's very rounded. So the more rounded it is, you'll probably have a lot less cast shadows unless you have like other objects interacting with it. But if you just have an arm, probably I think the best way to go about shading it would probably to make it look very rounded, and kind of I like to express that part. And then like the collarbone would have a bit of cast shadow. And I talked about it in the last video, but the collarbone was kind of coming outward. So when I go to shade, I can actually press that inward. So yeah, for the roundness, I'm really looking at like basically anything that kind of looks like a bicep sort of has that roundness. So the shoulders are very rounded, almost like a ball that is sort of separated, like apple slices or something. And then the bicep is a lot longer, so it's more stretched out. So it won't have such like compacted shadow, but more elongated. And then the tricep is a little bit more compact. And then the forearm and the elbow. Usually the elbow will be in shadow a lot of times, I noticed, unless it's like pointed upward towards the light. But a lot of times we have our arms down, or at least in an angle where there'd be a little bit of cast shadow on it, especially since it's like this whole upper arm is over top of the elbow. And then you could probably won't try to round that off too much. Also, one thing, just like for shadows in general, I like to try to be like as sparing at first as possible. Unless you're going for like a very dramatic lights, like lighting setup. I think usually I try to go for like a not too dramatic, because I like to show the characters a lot. So like I won't have like crazy light setups or anything, and I like to focus on more of like the characters. So I'll usually just do cast shadows and not worry too much about directional light as much, which is more of like a outdoor probably top light setup. But yeah, if you want to do more dramatic, then you would have probably more shadows. And if you're gonna do more of a dramatic setup, one thing that I found that makes it like look very appealing, in my opinion, is kind of going for more of like a very sectioned or grouped shadow. So if I wanted to do like a, let's say our light source was on this side and pointing here, and I wanted to do a very dramatic shadow, what I would usually do is watch the light source and basically like cover this whole half, since this will all be in shadow on the side of him, and then I don't have to worry about like any of that individual shadow. And then it's basically all the same idea through the whole rest of the character. And then down here we're sort of like moving away from the light, and then down here. And I probably like, now looking at it, if we wanted to do that as well, then I could add in cast shadows. So the knee and everything would drop all of this into shadow. Some of the foot would be caught. And usually I don't go for too much for heavy shadows, as the whole character can end up in darkness real quick. So that's just kind of personal taste. But if you want to do more of a realistic look or cinematic kind of look, then you could definitely experiment with a lot of these shadows. But kind of like how everything is just sort of grouped all together over here, I kind of like those sort of shadow setups, and I think they're a lot easier to do than some that are more very, very specific and kind of all over the place. But yeah, I think if you want to go that route, then I think that kind of looks just kind of personal taste, and it might make it a little bit easier to sort of think about, at least starting off or transitioning into getting into more lighting setups like that. But yeah, that's kind of how to shade the arm. I don't have much more to talk about for that. So, all right, I think I'll probably end the video here. It's a little bit of a shorter video, and then in the next one, I'll talk about more of like just messing around and doing some like fantasy or imaginative things with the arms, and how you could maybe just some ideas of how to go about it. And like I said, nothing in this video is like how to do it or the only way to do it. It's just kind of like my opinion on things, or like what I've just been doing with my own characters from experience. So you can take what you want, try some of the things, come up with your own, and really just do whatever works best for you. So yeah, see you guys in the next one.